Why does Kandiaru's blessing actually suck? How did Sung Jinwoo survive 27 years hunting down the monarchs in the other dimension? Like, did he pack food that's good for 27 years? Or was he just drinking universe juice or something? And when did he become Darth Vader and start force choking his enemies and shit? Today I'm counting down Jinwoo's 14 underrated skills and abilities. Let's start with one of the most essential abilities that any overpowered anime MC can have: unlimited inventory. Now listen, if I ever get isekai'd by Truck-con at some point in my life, and I could only have one special skill as I'm reborn in another world as a slime or what have you, forget everything else. I'd take unlimited inventory. This skill is so underrated for any protagonist. It's the coveted item box skill from almost every isekai anime where the MC can store and keep an unlimited number of items into a pocket dimension for use at any point later. For Jinwoo, all his things are hidden within his shadow, which is also where all of his soldiers live. Convenient, eh? But honestly, having unlimited inventory solves so much of anyone's problems. Going on a trip? Don't need a bag. All my clothes, gadgets, my entire house is all squared away in my inventory. Bought a ton of groceries? No sweat, just pop them all into your inventory and you can even take a stress-free stroll before you go home. Bro, I would kill for an unlimited inventory in my high school and college days. Any book, notebook, and pen I'd need for class would be taken care of. I could even put a whole ass kitchen set in there, and my classmates would have watched me cook my own gourmet meals for lunch. And for Jinwoo, this skill came in clutch a ton of times. Like when they got trapped in a land of ice and snow when that first Red Gate happened. Bro was so ready with the coats and supplies like they were just winter camping in Alaska or something. Or that time when he was going through the demon castle and the Vulcan dropped a big ass fragment of the world tree like, this won't fit in no bag. How you expect me to carry this? And since all his weapons and equipment are stored in it, he can summon them anytime he needs them and put them away just as quick. Which is how he was able to trick Cha-Hae-in into thinking that she only imagined a weapon on his hands when she caught him in front of the dungeon boss's room. Another one of Jinwoo's amazing but underrated passive abilities is great spellcaster Kandiaru's Blessing. Kandiaru's Blessing is a permanent upgrade that made Jinwoo basically Wolverine or Deadpool, but without the mouth. It was a quest reward after enduring and completing the secret quest, Courage of the Weak. You know that quest where 11 hunters lost their lives to a massive statue that grinned like Pennywise and had Superman's heat vision? In any case, one of the temporary effects of the blessing was the will to recover, which allowed Jinwoo to regenerate the leg he lost that day, like a starfish. It also came with a permanent effect, longevity, which gave him immunity to diseases and detoxified poisons in his system. Jinwoo no longer got sick. That's right, ever. No flu, no colds, no sniffle, and poison, his body kicked those to the curb. It's like having a self-cleaning oven as a body. The second something nasty got into his bloodstream, his body went, "Not today, Satan," and flushed it out. Now this is honestly an OP ability, but I feel like it wasn't given much of the attention it deserved. For one, this ability allowed him to snag the benefits of Casca's venom gland without dealing with the nasty side effects. Consuming the venom gland made his skin tough and allowed him to take 20% less physical damage, and the muscle damage and loss of his strength stat that came with it was cast out like the devil in an exorcism. It also came in clutch during Kargalgan's attack. Like Buddy threw all the spells and status effects at his disposal, and bro just shrugged them off. If it was anyone else, they would have been dead 10 times over. Even the Ant King's poison didn't phase Jinwoo. And don't even get me started on his regeneration speed. With the powers of Kandiaru's Blessing, dude heals faster than a normal human. And when he sleeps, it's like hitting the fast forward button on a healing potion. Imagine taking a nap and waking up looking like a brand new action figure. I'd be 100% at work all the time. Like, no sleep. Well, I guess I'd need sleep to recover, but for all the glitz and glamour of this ability, there's one thing that sucks about it. Jinwoo can't get drunk anymore. Yup, I mean, I don't drink, so I guess we the same, bro. I guess call me Sung Jinwoo. Yup, since the system considers alcohol a poisonous substance, no wild nights out for our boy, the Shadow Monarch anymore. One sip of alcohol and his body's like, nope, we're not doing this. It's like having your mom around while you're out in the bar with your friends, slapping every drink you order. Like, Mom, I'm 21, what the hell? So while he's out there saving the world, Jinwoo's also missing out on karaoke nights and getting blackout drunk with the boys. Up next is Jinwoo's skill, Commander's Authority, or as I like to call it, Jinwoo's Jedi Mind Trick. Fun fact, he didn't start with Commander's Authority. He originally got a lesser version of the skill first called Commander's Touch, after defeating Igris. It was like the trial version of the skill, you know? Still cool, but like not the premium version of ChatGPT. This skill gave the player the ability to physically control objects without touching them. Jinwoo also realized It was what Igris was using to recall his sword to his hand, like Thor. Did I mention it doesn't cost any mana? Now, it wasn't until his battle with Kandiaru statues that it evolved into its true form. But even before it achieved that, Jinwoo was already using this underrated skill in very unique ways. Jinwoo used Commander's Touch not just to move stuff with his mind, he used it to basically fly through the air and dodge attacks like a superhero. A little recap, in chapter 43, Jinwoo realized that there's a weight limit to the skill. He tried to test it on the corpses of the giant centipedes in the penalty dungeon, but his proficiency at the time was still too low, so large objects were out of the question. But over time, as he used it more, he became capable of controlling larger objects, to the point where he became able to use Commander's Touch on his own body and basically make himself zip through the air like a low-budget Superman or Alphaba. He tried using this first with his fight with Vulcan. Bro was so fast that Jinwoo had to make a last-minute decision to dodge his attacks, and came up with a 200 IQ big brain idea to use the recoil of Commander's Touch to dodge Vulcan's swing. But wait, there's more. He also used Commander's Touch to throw enemies around like ragdolls or crush them with magical pressure. You know, like Darth Vader, force choking people. Until eventually, Commander's Touch achieved its final form, Commander's Authority. And dude, the skill became so powerful it's like a black hole in terms of strength, right? Jinwoo used this to take down Kandiaru's statues all at once. But he didn't even break a sweat. Jinwoo was even shook at how powerful the gravitational pull was, even though he only used a fraction of his power. It even pulled on the biggest statue in Kartanon Temple. Jinwoo finally got his revenge, after all that time, you know? Sucks to suck. Now, it might not be as flashy as summoning an army of shadows, but it's definitely one of Jinwoo's most versatile and underrated abilities. Floating, crushing, and throwing enemies around like toys, right? Sign me up. But of course, there's a catch. Against opponents who are way stronger than him, Commander's Authority is about as useful as watering your garden during a storm, or using a water gun on a dragon. Speaking of fighting dragons, the first title that Jinwoo earned came from fighting beast-type monsters, Wolf Assassin. And this title was so damn useful during his fight against Cerberus. But to understand why it was useful against the three-headed guardian of the demon castle, here's a little 411 on this underrated ability. It says the title Wolf Assassin is given to hunters who excel at hunting wolves, and gives a passive effect of a 40% increase on Jinwoo's abilities when fighting not just wolves, but all beast-type monsters, which made it perfect for fighting Cerberus. The Wolf Assassin buffs activated during the fight and allowed him to go at least toe-to-paw against the three-headed Hellhound. Granted, he had to endure about 3 minutes of torture after the Cerberus activated its skill Rage, which doubled its stats, and also brought me back to when I had to endure at least 3 minutes of scolding from my mom when I almost burned the kitchen down trying to cook mac and cheese. Anyway, this ability might be hyper-specific to beast-type monsters, and knowing that Jinwoo will most likely fight more humanoid bosses and enemies in the future, it didn't serve that much purpose during his later years. But a 40% increase in abilities against beast-type monsters is nothing to chew at, especially when you got this for free just by murking Steel Fang Lycans in the instance dungeon at the Hapjeong subway station. Also, this wasn't the only skill that helped him survive 3 sets of fangs and the fiery breath of hell. There's also his passive skill, Tenacity, which came in clutch after the oversized dog bit his left arm and shoulder. Jinwoo's skill Tenacity activated because his health had fallen below 30%, and any further damage that he received from that point will have been reduced by 50%, because plot armor. Well, technically it was because the system was designed to keep its only player as alive as possible to inherit the original Monarch of Shadow's powers. Or else Kandiaru and Ashbourne were gonna have to look for a new candidate, and honestly no one's exactly falling in line to apply. But this wasn't the only time that Tenacity saved Jinwoo's ass. In fact, it saved him 2 more times. The second one was during his fight against Igris in chapter 39. Tenacity also reactivated, which gave Jinwoo some much needed power to actually block Igris' massive sword and go stabby on his face. Then skill activated a 3rd time during the job change quest when the living armor knights overwhelmed him. Almost lost his life then too, if not for the penalty dungeon that yonked him out of there at the last minute. So what did I tell you? Plot armor. Speaking of plot armor, Buddy got one of the most underrated but actually OP skills any main character could have. Monster language fluency. Bro was even surprised the first time he discovered it. In chapter 52 of the manhwa, Baruka was trash talking Jinwoo and the remaining hunters, and Jinwoo calls him out. And Baruka was like, even Jinwoo and the other hunters were like, wait, what? That's when Bro realized that the system also granted him the ability to speak and understand monster tongue, which he then used to his advantage to communicate not just with enemy monsters, but with his own shadow soldiers too. And even though he was constantly communicating with the shadow soldiers ever since completing the job change quest, it wasn't until Beru that he got the chance to actually talk with him. Upon turning the Ant King over to the dark side, because he's the monarch of shadows, duh, he discovers that his elite shadows can move up another rank into generals. And as a general, the new shadow Beru was capable of speaking, but of course since he was a monster, it seemed like only Jinwoo could hear and understand him. Also, it's probably because he's an ant, and ants don't usually have human vocal cords and shit, but again, this is anime, so screw biology, I guess. Anyway, this skill is actually underrated because without it, Jinwoo wouldn't have any idea why the monsters wanted to attack and kill humans. I mean, of course it got explained to him by Leisha and Ashbourne eventually, but even before he met them, other monster species, especially the orcs, had already given him a hint about the conspiracy theory behind the gates. Groktar, the orc leader that attacked during the dungeon break at Jinna's school, snitched about the voices in their head that constantly told them to kill humans, which made Jinwoo more weary of trusting the system. And that info also gave him a hint that Leisha was also under the same spell. If Jinwoo wasn't aware of that fact, he would have been more likely to trust Leisha, and who knows what damage that mofo could have done if he got loose. Who knew Jinwoo being fluent in monster speak could save the day? Now I can't talk about Jinwoo's abilities without talking about what makes him so OP in the first place. Umbrakinesis, which is the total control of shadows, the darkness, and the abyss. And with this great power comes sick moves like shadow extraction, shadow preservation, and portal creation. But since this is a list of his most underrated abilities, I would like to direct your attention to Exhibit A of his skills that belong in this category. 2, in fact. First, let me tell you about the Monarch's domain and why it's secretly OP. Think of the Monarch's domain as Jinwoo's personal playground, where the shadows rule and his enemies, well, let's just say they don't have a good time. Within this space, his shadow soldiers get a 50% boost. Yup, his shadow army goes from scary to terrifying. It's like giving them a double shot of espresso before a fight, or giving your little bro sugar before bed. But the thing people miss out on is the fact that the skill hides more benefits than your average 50% buff. First, within this domain, Jinwoo has a total control of the battlefield. Basically, he becomes the CEO of everything. He can even change the terrain, set traps, and summon more shadows to join the party. Second, the Monarch's domain also acts as a sanctuary for Jinwoo and his team. It weakens outside attacks and isolates his enemies, cutting them off from help. It's like he's saying, "You're in my world now, buddy. Good luck getting out." Also, did you know that it's not only Jinwoo who can use this skill? Yup, other monarchs have this ability as well. And depending on the monarch, their domain can have unique features. Like the Monarch of the Plague, having a swarm of insects and a bunch of zombies at her disposal. Or the Monarch of Destruction having full control of his space with his dragons. It's probably also the reason why he had to kidnap Antares and take him far away from his minions. Jinwoo basically took him out of his domain and brought him into his. You know how it is, man. The home team always plays better, at home. But besides Monarch's domain, Jinwoo has another underrated darkness-based ability, Shadow Exchange. And honestly, if not for this seemingly simple skill, the Jeju Island raid would have totally gone to shit. Because without Shadow Exchange, he wouldn't have been able to instantly teleport to Jeju Island and save the remaining hunters from becoming Anchao. The Shadow Exchange skill was first introduced in Chapter 88, after Jinwoo defeated the Demon King Baran and finally succeeded in crafting the Holy Water of Life. According to the system, the caster of Shadow Exchange can swap places with any Shadow Soldier. It has a 3-hour cooldown though, so it's kind of an in case of emergency please break glass type of skill. The cooldown changed the more he leveled up though, and by the time Jinwoo became a full-fledged monarch, the skill seemed to have little to no cooldown period anymore. I mean, come on, Buddy's got total control of darkness by the end of the series. Ain't nobody got time to wait for skill cooldowns and shit. And Jinwoo already had assigned shadows to guard some of the most important people in his life, including Miss Cha-hae-in. So when he realized something was wrong in the Jeju Island raid, bro just showed up ready to throw hands. But the moment when Jinwoo realized how important this skill was during the dungeon break in Jin'a's school. In Chapter 118, while helping the Knights Guild with clearing out a massive dungeon in Busan, Jinwoo sensed what was happening in Jin'a's school and proceeded to leave Beru in charge of finishing the dungeon raid. But the Shadow Exchange skill was still on cooldown at the time, and waiting for 1 hour and 42 minutes was obviously out of the question. So he forced to exit the dungeon and ride Kaizo at breakneck speed to save his sister in the school. Man, if only Shadow Exchange was available at that time, there would have been less casualties and Jin'a wouldn't have gotten PTSD. Jinwoo probably partly blamed himself for what happened, but what could he do? Up next at number 6, You know that quote, if you gaze long enough into the abyss will gaze back at you? That's exactly what Norma Selner experienced when she tried to peer into Jinwoo's mind. Because ya boy has clairvoyance resistance. Jinwoo's power is so crazy strong that it basically has a giant do not spy sign. If someone tries to peek at him or his power through psychic means, like what Norma did, they get hit with a tsunami of darkness and fear. Bro has anti-snoop tools and a firewall in the brain like he's protecting his browser history or something. It's like looking into the bottomless pit, but the pit is like, hey, I see you too. And suddenly you're noping out of there faster than someone who just saw a spider in their cereal. But why is this skill underrated? Because every secret agent, spy, and assassin in the world would kill for an ability like this. Like imagine if you were one of the assassins in Sakamoto days, and Shin tries to look into your mind, but all he gets is the void. If I were Shin, I'd be noping the F out of your situation too. But this ability is especially important for Jinwoo because no one else would be able to discover the depths and the limits of his powers, so no one would be able to predict and intercept his next moves. I mean, even Antares, the all-powerful monarch of destruction, sucked at reading Jinwoo's mind and figuring out his plan until the last minute. Bro ended up getting sliced in half, and on the business end of the ruler's spears, like a dragon-flavored kebab. Speaking of sucking, Thomas Andre also sucked ass during his fight with Jinwoo, but it seems Jinwoo had a secret cheat ability that activated during that fight. Now, I don't really know if it was just because of his sheer strength, or if it's because he's also the monarch of death, but Jinwoo somehow negated Thomas Andre's regenerative abilities during their fight. I mean, think about it. This was one of the guys who was blessed with brilliant light from the rulers, and was one of the survivors of the Kamish raid 8 years before. He even shrugged off a piercing injury from one of Kamish's fangs and made daggers out of one as a souvenir. But a couple of blows from Jinwoo not only did massive damage to him, it even broke his reinforcement armor, which was supposedly tougher than your math finals and college essays combined. Bro surrendered, and even then the healers couldn't bring him back to 100% immediately. But he almost crossed into Valhalla if it wasn't for Mr. White pleading. And even after several days into recovery, Bro was still in a cast when he decided to give Jinwoo the Kamish Wrath Daggers. Speaking of daggers, Dagger Rush is also another underrated ability. But who would have thought that such a simple dagger throwing skill could actually injure a monarch? If you remember back in chapter 151, after the Monarch of Frost attacks Chairman Go Gung-hee and attempts to escape through a portal, Jinwoo activates Dagger Rush on the mofo and one of the daggers actually lodged itself on the dude's back. And it was Casca's Venom Fang too, which poisoned my guy and did considerable damage to him. But he came crawling back to his big bros and told on his bully. But his ego was so hurt that a mere human and his puny dagger throwing skill injured him. I mean, look at him. Bro looks like he wants to cry.
Look at little Goblin Jr. Gonna cry?
What makes this ability so much more lethal though is that it works in combo with two of Jinwoo's overpowered passive skills, Advanced Dagger Techniques and Critical Attack. These passive activate whenever Jinwoo uses his daggers, or in this case, uses a skill that uses his daggers. Jinwoo unlocked Advanced Dagger Techniques after his extensive use of a dagger. As the system explains, it allows him to be more proficient with using a dagger, inflicting 33% more damage when attacking with them. Add to that the effects of Critical Attack, which allows him to pinpoint his opponent's vital points and deliver a massive ouchie. It's like getting kicked on the nuts, but with a dagger. I guess that's why even the Monarch of Frost wasn't able to shrug it off. Fun fact though, like Commander's Authority, this skill evolved from its lesser form, Dagger Toss. Previously, it only allowed him to throw one dagger at the opponent. Then when it became Dagger Rush, Jinwoo was then able to send all of his daggers flying from all directions. Okay, before I continue with the rest of the video, I know you're wondering, where the hell are these awesome skills? Where's Mutilation and Camouflage and the... Well, if you remember, at the beginning of this video I said I was going to be talking about our Lord and Savior's underrated skills and abilities. Now what that means is, all that I'll be talking about today are either 1. Abilities that may seem like meh, but are secretly OP with the right conditions, or 2. Skills that Jinwoo only used a couple of times in the series, but have turned the tides of the battle in his favor, or saved someone's ass. So I left out all the powerful high damage dealing skills that get the limelight all the time. It's time to make the underdogs shine, you feel me? Alright, now let's proceed to the ability that I want to highlight right now, Jinwoo's self-sustenance capabilities. But wait a minute, didn't Jinwoo stop climbing the demon castle at floor 75 because he ran out of food and resources? Yes, he did, but that was before he fully became the Shadow Monarch. And since then, Jinwoo no longer needed food and resources to survive. Wanna know how I know? It's in chapter 178, when Jinwoo spent 27 years fighting the Monarchs and their monsters in the gap between dimensions, an eternal world of darkness. Now, unless you can make me believe that 7-Eleven or McDonald's or Starbucks opened branches in the gap between dimensions, then I think it's safe to assume that Jinwoo sustained himself for 27 years in that dark space without needing food or other resources. He probably didn't even need to go for a pee break or do a numero dos. Jinwoo was basically a god at that point, so normal human bodily functions wouldn't have bothered him anymore. And speaking of humanity, Jinwoo's powers of mental manipulation have been quite useful to the humans he met along the way. Cause you see, if it was anyone else, they would have tried to mind control humanity to suit their own agenda. That's right, Lelouch. But Jinwoo has only ever used his mind skills to either change a person for the better, fulfill a wish, or help them see the truth of everything. Let's start with his memory manipulation. Jinwoo can mess with people's memories just by touching them. In fact, with just a mere touch, he can give someone their memories back from their original timeline. Like what happened the first time he met Woo Jin-chul in the new timeline he created. Or when he returned Chairman Go Gun-hee's memories from the time they've known each other in the Hunters Guild. Oh, and get this, he can even let people peek into his own memories. Like, hey, wanna see what I've been up to? Spoiler alert, it's epic, and your life sucks in comparison. He used this to spill the tea on Woo Jin-chul about the upcoming fight between the rulers and monarchs, as well as the truth about the gates. Basically, Jinwoo can download information into someone's brain without needing Bluetooth or Wi-Fi, which sucks because I desperately needed that during my exams in college. Also, let's not forget about his powers of hypnotism. Jinwoo can also make people do whatever he wants just by snapping his fingers. Like he's got a remote control for people's brains. Remember when he ran into Kim Chol in the new timeline? Jinwoo hypnotized bro to stop him from being a bully. One snap and suddenly Kim Chol's like, you know what, I want to let you go and be a better person. I mean, imagine being hypnotized into being a better person. That's like getting a free instant therapy session that actually gives solutions instead of asking you questions. Honestly, if he wants to, he can snap his fingers and force every a-hole and bully in the area to volunteer at a soup kitchen or donate all their clothes to charity. All their clothes. Finally, at number 1 is an underrated skill that only the monarchs and rulers seem to have, Acausality. Now what does this fancy schmancy word mean? Let me break it down for you, so even your pet goldfish can understand. Basically, Acausality is like being the boss of cause and effect or time. See, most of us are stuck in the flow of time like a leaf floating down a river. But monarchs and rulers, they're like, time? That's cute. Here, imagine if someone tried to hit you with a go back in time and erase you attack. For normal people, that's game over. But for the monarchs and rulers, it's like throwing a water balloon at a T-Rex. It just doesn't work. They're immune to time shenanigans because they exist outside the normal flow of cause and effect. Acausality means they don't get affected by changes in the timeline. If someone goes back in time and tries to mess things up, the monarchs and rulers are like, nice try, I'm still here. It's like they've got a VIP pass to reality, and time is just a bouncer letting them in. Which is why Jinwoo still retained his memories after the rulers reactivated the Cup of Reincarnation to turn back time. Honestly, Jinwoo's plan was pure insanity. He wanted to turn back time to before the gates opened and vow to take care of the monarchs and their army in the dimensional rift before they could start wreaking havoc in the world. Bro basically wanted to bring back everyone who died after the calamity of the gates, and at the same time go Rambo on the monarchs' asses in the dimensional rift. Even the rulers were like, are you sure, bud? They also warned him that while he retained the memories of everything that happened, no one else will. Remember that he was the hero who saved the world. In the ruler's words, ruin awaits you should you fail, and no one will be there to congratulate you should you succeed. But that's what makes Acausality so underrated. The fact that Jinwoo is no longer affected by the reset meant he still had access to his memories in the previous timeline. It also meant he was better prepared for the fight against the monarchs. They remembered him too, sure, but Jinwoo's will and determination far surpassed any of them, even Ashborn, the previous monarch of shadows, and none of their half-assed motivations were able to defeat the GOAT. Now these underrated skills and abilities have made Jinwoo the strongest monarch for real. But have you ever wondered, which one of Jinwoo's shadow soldiers is the strongest?